Hi, I'm Emma Jones. I'm an artist printmaker from Berwickshire, and today I'm going to be showing you 3 different sorts of monoprinting that you can do at home. A monoprint is a single print, so mono being single, and it's perhaps the most straightforward and experimental way of printmaking, and it's something that you can do really easily at home with not very many expensive tools and certainly without a press. I'm going to cover 3 different techniques. So the first one is a trace monoprint. So that's basically where we roll out a layer of ink and put some paper on the back and draw on the back of the paper. And where we draw, the ink is picked up, and you can end up with some nice images there. You can do it from life as well, and you get some great effects. And the line that you get can be really rich and unusual. The second is we're going to be printing some feathers and leaves, but really you can do that with any flat object. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be inking them up, as we say, so covering them in ink, and we're going to be taking some prints off the feathers and leaves themselves and the marks that they make in the ink. So that combination can be a really good way of producing lots and lots of different prints, all really different, and a starting point for real experimentation. The third print is a more painterly print. It's reductive monoprinting. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the plate in a layer of ink. We're going to remove bits. We're going to make marks in it. We're going to print that, and I find that's a really good way to either start a piece of work. So quite often I'll do it and then I'll put it away for 5 days, either draw into it or print into it again, or perhaps cut it up and use it for collage. Again, it's a really nice way of experimenting, being free, trying different marks and things. So I hope you enjoy them all. Today I'm going to take you through the process of making a trace monoprint, and it's the easiest technique to use in terms of printmaking. You need very few tools to be able to do it, so it's something that's really easy to do from home. It's quite painterly and experimental, and you can have great fun with them. The only things you need are things I've got on the table here. You need a sheet of some sort. Now this, I'm using an acrylic sheet, but it could be sort of toughened glass, like a chopping board. It could be a piece of wood. It could be a piece of lino. It's anything really that you can roll a layer of ink onto and take a print from. So we've got that. I'm using some relief printing ink because I think that works really well for this process. The stuff I use is called Cranfield's Safe Wash ink, so it's oil based but it's water washable, so it's safe to use at home, and you don't need any white spirit or anything nasty to clean it up with. It just cleans up with soap and water. You could use things like acrylic paints to make these things with, but they tend to splodge a bit too much, so I find, although I have experimented with using different media, the nice thing about printing inks is that they don't stick to the surface quite as much, so they don't splodge around the plate. So you'll see in a minute, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out a thin layer of ink and I'm going to put the paper on top of it, and if this was something like acrylic paint or oil paint, then the paper would just stick to it, so it would be harder to do that way. The other thing I've got is rollers, so I can roll out a thin layer of ink, and I've got a selection of pencils here to draw with. So I've got 3 colours here I'm using, and I'm just going to mix them together to hopefully create a nice kind of greyish colour. Sometimes it's quite nice to mix a few colours like this, because especially if you're not mixing it properly, then you can get some different colours and a bit of tone on your printing plate from the different colours where they merge together. So I'm actually using a sort of an umber and a blue and a little bit of white. So I'm going to just warm up the ink a little bit so it's easier to roll out. And I'm going to, can you hear that? That's just rolling this onto the roller, and it's sticking to the roller, and I'm getting a nice covering of ink here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out a thin layer onto the acrylic sheet here. It's really, really important that it's a very thin layer of ink for this technique. Otherwise, when you put the paper down, you're going to pick up far too much ink. I shall see in a minute. So there we go. That looks reasonably okay. So I'm going to get a piece of paper. Any paper's fine, really, as long as it's not too textured. So you want something that's reasonably smooth. So you could use just bog standard printer paper. I've got some heavyweight cartridge paper here. You can use that. You can use thin Japanese paper. The only thing not to use really is things like watercolour that's really textured, because you won't. It's too bumpy, so it won't pick up the ink on the surface very well. So all I'm going to do is put this on top, and I have a sketch as reference, but you can draw freehand. You could even draw from life doing this. It's quite a good way to draw from life. And I'm just going to draw on the back of the paper. Now, wherever I make marks on the back of the paper, it's going to pick up the ink on the front and give me some nice effects, hopefully. So if I'm just do a rough sketch. Bear in mind that this is going to come out backwards. So I'm drawing the figure looking this way, but it's actually going to be looking the other way, because it's actually reversed. So if we lift the paper there, you can see where I've made marks, then it's actually making a mark on the other side. Okay, so trousers there. Obviously the harder you press, the firmer the mark is going to be. So draw this figure looking this way. It's not the sort of thing, well, you can be very accurate with it, but it's quite nice to draw quite loosely. If you do want to be accurate with it, then you can actually trace things. So I could, for example, trace the sketch onto some tracing paper, and then I could flip the tracing paper over and draw on the back of the tracing paper instead of on the paper if I wanted it to be very accurate. Draw the bird there. And what I'll do now is I'll take some different tools. So where I shade heavily, that should be a heavy mark. I'll go with the hat there. And where I want to fill in some colour, I'll just take my hands and smooth down, and wherever I'm rubbing, the ink is going to come off. Right, so let's see how we get on. So there we go. So as you can see, this paper is slightly textured. It's not really, really smooth. So there is a sort of difference in the areas where the ink has been picked up. So you can see the very strong lines where I've drawn with a pencil, and this one particular, and where I've rubbed the back of the paper with this kind of thicker pencil here, it's produced this area of colour. And where I've rubbed with my finger, it's come off more lightly. What you can do is you could use another colour. So you can get quite a variety there. And what you can do is you could use another colour, put it down another colour and draw with that as well to create a different effect. And if I just do this very lightly. And for this one, I don't want very much to come off, so I'm just going to put a little bit onto this chopping board. This is just a glass chopping board. I'm going to put the paper down here, and I can see from my drawing where the figures are, and I'm just going to do a little bit here and there just to add some gold. There we go. So if we peel it back, we've got some bits of gold, and again you could be much more targeted in how you do this. And you could also block bits out if you wanted to, so you could block bits of the figures out if you didn't want them to pick up any ink at all. And another nice thing we can do with this, with the first plate, is if you look at the plate here, we've got the outlines of the figures here where I've drawn, so it's picked up the ink in the bits where the figures are. So I can do what we call a ghost print. So I'm going to use some lighter paper, this one, because this is very thin printer paper, and this is going to pick everything up really nicely. And I'm just going to take a spoon, and I'm going to rub the back of the paper here to transfer. This time I'm going to just rub over the whole of the plate. Bear in mind, wherever you put your finger down, so if I do that to hold it, then you're going to get the print of my hand on the front of the paper, because I'm putting pressure on the ink at that point. What I want to do is transfer the outline of the figures onto this piece of paper. Mm-hmm. You can also use your hands to transfer. Just use the flat of your hands to get a more even pressure across the plate. Right, so there we are. Very scribbly, but you get the idea. You do get the outline of the figures there. This technique is a really nice technique to do as a starter for things. So you can then take this and either add more layers of printing, or you can let it dry and go over it with pastels, acrylics, whatever. So it's quite a nice, you get this kind of plate noise and accidental marks and things, which work really well, especially if you're starting out with the work. But I think it's a really good technique, and as I said, you don't need a press, you don't need anything really apart from a sheet, some ink, a ruler and some tools. I'm going to do a lovely technique, lovely monoprinting technique, which where you print leaves and feathers. You can do this with any really flat object. Print them at home without a press. I've got a collection of leaves that I've gathered here, some different shapes. They can be reasonably fresh, they work quite well if they're reasonably fresh, but what you do have to do is sort of dry them a little bit, so you don't want them kind of soaking wet if you're out on your walk and you're picking leaves off the ground or off trees where they're wet. You want to make sure that you get some of the moisture out of them before you print with them. We've got some nice shaped leaves there, and here I've got some different feathers which, as you can see, have actually been printed before. They're not really red stripy feathers, and these work quite well as well. Fan them out. So what we're going to do is, I have some printing ink here. This is Cranfield Safe Wash relief based ink, and this is relief printing ink that's made from oil, but you can clean it up with soap and water at home. So this is quite nice to use. The colours are quite rich, and I find it works pretty well for this technique. I've got one of these little things, which is it's called a Baron, and it's a Japanese printing disc, if you like. So it's just a disc with some bamboo around it. These are pretty cheap. You can pick these up pretty cheap online, but you can actually use a wooden spoon or the flat of your hand as well to print. You don't have to have one of these. And I'm using an acrylic sheet to roll the ink out onto here. So again, you can have a piece of lino, you could have a piece of glass, as long as it's not really fragile, because you're going to have to put some pressure on it. So I've rolled out some ink already onto, these are just, I'm using just glass chopping boards here. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to roll out some ink onto the plate. Get my ruler here. And we want it to be not really thick and gloopy, but you need to put quite a lot on, because what we're going to do is we're going to transfer some of the ink to the leaves and the feathers. So you want there to be quite a bit of ink for them to pick up. Right, so I've rolled that out. So I'll choose some leaves here. So this one. I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to try and place them in a way that might look attractive, because as you'll see, we'll be able to take several different sorts of prints from the leaves. Okay, put one up there. And I'll put another one there. Okay. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some, you need some fairly fine paper. So you could just use bog standard printer paper. I have some Japanese Hosho paper here. But normal paper like this will work really well too, just the sort of bog standard stuff that you put in printers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the ink onto the leaves by rubbing. As you can see, I can see the shapes of the stems coming out already. So I'm going to put quite a lot of pressure on. I'm also going to use the back of my hands to get into the nooks and crannies of the leaves and really pressurise them. I can see them coming through and I can feel the bumps in them, which means that I can put extra pressure on the areas where the leaves are. Right, so see how we go. So we've got two things here. So we've got the outlines of the leaves here, and we also have, when we peel off, our inky leaves. So we've got our inky leaves there, we've got our outline here. That's the first print. The second print we're going to make, and I'm going to do this with copy paper, is where the leaves have made an impression, where I've pulled them off. Then you'll get some nice marks in the ink, which we're going to transfer to the paper. This part can work a bit better with a press, but you can get some really good results from just rubbing. Let me just check. I'm just going to peek and see how it's going. Yep, it's working quite well. So if I peel off this layer, I've got some nice effects there where the ink was lifted off by the structures in the leaves. So I'm going to put that piece there. And now I'm going to introduce another colour. So I'm using a yellow ochre. I'm going to do the same with this. There's a little bit of gold mixed in with this. I'm wanting not quite so much ink this time because I'm going to do a couple of the feathers. Right. So we're going to do the same thing again as we did with the leaves. I'm going to pop them in the ink and get them nice and inky. Pop some paper on top here. I just use my fingers, I think, in this case, just to, because you can really feel the shape of one of the feathers in particular. Is quite, it's got quite a thick back to it, so I just want to make sure that I can get into the corners there. You get better control with your hands and your fingers because you can actually feel what you're doing. Right. Okay, so I'll peel this off. Again, we've got the nice shapes of the leaves there. And if we peel off the feathers, got a nice layer of ink on them. Okay, so again we can make a ghost print from here because we've got the outline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece of paper, put it back in here and try and transfer the outline of the feathers, or the outline the feathers have left rather, in the ink. There we go. So it's slightly offset, but you get the idea. So you get some nice effects there. So again, you can really play with these things because you can use the bits you've printed. You can use, once you've taken off the plate, you can use what's left on the plate. You can take lots of different impressions. So I could keep going and maybe have about 4 or 5 prints because there's quite a lot of ink on here using the same plate. But the next thing we're going to do is print these items here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this plate. Just going to use some water. Just wipe it off. You quite often get interesting prints when you wipe off the ink as well. As you're wiping off the ink, you can get some nice patterns and things. So that'll do for now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to arrange these inked up leaves and feathers on the plate. Get them as flat as we can. We use a bigger piece of paper, so this is the Japanese paper. And I'm going to put that on here. And I'm going to, once again, probably use my hands because I can feel where the leaves are. And really rub this. Get as much ink as possible onto the paper. Okay, have a quick peek, see how it's going. Right. So, they've all stuck. So, as we peel off, there's one. Got some quite nice, that's worked quite well actually. Got some good impressions there. So we've got some nice impressions there. So as you can see, from just a few leaves and feathers, we can get possibilities, and we could probably get another 3 or 4 prints of these inky items here, and we could also get some more prints, ghost prints and things off the plates that we've got with ink left in them. So it is quite a versatile technique, and it's something you can really have fun with at home. The technique we're going to do now is called reductive monoprint, and it's quite a painterly way of working with monoprint. It's quite a freeing technique, and it's one where you get to play with lots of inks and make marks with lots of different things. You can start with a sketch or painting in mind, but sometimes it's quite nice to just have a plate of ink, make some textures and see where you go from there. And you can either use them as a start of something, as work in itself, or you can leave them to dry and then go into them with acrylic paint or with pastels and make something of them that way. So what I've got here is I have some printmaking ink. This is relief-based ink. It's Cranfield Safe Wash. It's oil-based, but it's water washable. And I've found it's really good for using at home. It's quite good for hand printing as well because it's quite rich. So you're able to get quite good rich prints without a press. We've got a couple of cheap printmaking rollers here. We've got these are actually glass chopping boards which I'm rolling ink out onto. We have various tools to make marks with. So I've got some bubble wrap, I've got some material, I've got a sock, some scrim, a sponge, some brushes. You get the idea. So this is our printmaking plates. I'm using just a sheet of acrylic, but I mean you could use anything flat. Like you could use lino, you could use some wood. They're all going to take the ink differently, but it's a technique you can experiment with. There's no hard and fast rules. The paper we've got today is a fairly thin one. If you're printing at home, I find it helps to use a fairly thin printmaking paper, so I quite like to use the Japanese style papers because they're quite strong for printmaking. They can take a lot of punishment, but they're not too thick and heavy. So you don't need as much pressure to print on them, and I'm using this Hosho paper pad here, which is an easily accessible brand of Japanese paper. You can also use just bog standard copy paper, or you can use newsprint, or you can use just any cartridge paper as long as it's not too thick. So what we're going to start with is we're going to roll some ink onto here, reasonably thin. So I'm going to start with this kind of blue concoction here that I've already put on the slab. We want it to be quite thin because we don't want, what we're going to do is we're going to put the paper directly on top of the image to print it. So we want it to be not so thick that the paper is just going to come up with a whole load of blobby ink on. And this is one of the problems I've found. You can monoprint with acrylics and things, but sometimes you find that they do just stick to the paper too much. Right. So used a layer here, and what I'm going to do is start removing some ink and making some different patterns on the plate. So I find a sock is quite good for this actually. Any old sock. So we'll start with a horizon line. For example, I'm just going to remove the ink right across there. Okay, and then I might add a few clouds. Make some different marks there. And I've got this material here. What I'm going to do is where I press down, it'll remove some of the ink there. Again, quite abstract. Okay, some bubble wrap. Put some of this. Just say this was sky. We all know that bubble wrap sky is really good. So you can see this is inky as well, so I can also add some marks with this. And I'm going to use this a brush to make some marks here. So these could be the waves. Or it could just be a lot of abstract marks. Again, with these things, you never really know until you print them what they're going to look like. I quite like using cotton buds for removing layers of ink. Bird in here. Another brush to give some more texture. This brush has seen better days. Just going to thin it out. I think what I might do is I might remove some of the ink at the corners. Okay, so that's quite a monochrome plate. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to add a colour as well. So we'll put a little bit of, say, a stripe down here to give us a little bit of variety. And again, we could use something like this to print some textures in some different colours here. To add a little bit of variety. There we go. Right, got very inky fingers now. Ideally you want to wash your hands before you do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the paper directly on top of the plate, like so. If you've got a press, you can run it through a press at this point, but you can get pretty good prints here without doing that. So I'm using a Japanese Baron, which is a flat disc made wrapped in bamboo. These are very cheap and quite readily available, but of course you can use a flat wooden spoon, you can use your hands, you could use the back of a clean printmaking roller. That's another quite a good way to do it. Get quite a decent amount of pressure there. So anything where you're going to get quite a lot of pressure. These are always quite surprising the way they come out, at least they are to me anyway. You never quite know what you're going to get. And quite often it's a good starting point for a piece of work because you don't know what you're going to get, and then you take your first print and you think, wonder where this is going, and then you can sort of work it out from there. And sometimes it's good to go back into them when they're dry with other colours or with other tools. So there we go. It's perhaps too much bubble wrap, you could argue, in that one, but as you can see, it's fairly atmospheric. You've got some interesting marks going on, nice variations there. So what I'd probably do with this is leave it for 5 days to dry and then maybe work into it with something else when I've kind of figured out what I think it needs. So I'll put that down just now, and then what I'll do is I'll try and get what's called a ghost print from it. So the ink will be a lot lighter because I've taken a lot of it off already, but you're still going to get some there. So what I might do is take a little bit more off in areas where I maybe think it hasn't worked. So take a bit off there. And then I'll do a second print. Try using my hands. Sometimes you actually get more pressure just by using the palm of your hand, the sort of flat part. Make sure you rub in all directions. And you might have to steady your table as well. Right, let's see how this has come out. Right, so this is a lot lighter now, as you can see. So it's what we'd call a ghost print. But obviously it has its own charm, and as a starter for something else, or perhaps to use in collage or something, you've got some nice texture and tone on here. It's really, you can fuel your imagination and do something different with it. Right, so we've covered 3 different monoprinting techniques today. We've covered trace monoprinting, we draw on the back of the paper, we've covered printing leaves and feathers, and we've covered the painterly reduction method of monoprinting, where you can make marks and images using just a layer of ink. They're all really easy to do at home, they're all really experimental and produce quite often surprising results that you can use as starter for other artwork or as themselves, work in themselves. If you want to find out some more information on monoprinting, then I have information on my website at weebluepress.com. And I hope you enjoy doing this at home.